This is awesome. Y'all have bought thousands of these, which means there's a lot more people growing some of their own food. Now you see me using these, growing food with clay pebbles or leca. And these work well because they're porous, they retain moisture, but man, they can be a pain to clean and reuse, especially if you grow past the microgreen stage and let them get bigger. The problem is that the clay pebbles float, just like the roots and organic debris. It's tough to get them separated. I got to where I would just get most of it out and set the rest in a tray in the hot sun. After a few days, the organic material would shrivel up. Then a few of you asked if we could use sand, so I gave it a try. Now this was my first attempt, and I did it just like we did with the clay pebbles. Instead, I used sand. We got microgreens to sprout, and you can see the sand is still damp. Now, I normally wouldn't refill this yet, but I want to show you how the refillable adapter works. I'm going to use straight tap water since this is just a test, and you can always add a little nutrients if you like. To put it back in, you can hold your thumb over the top of the bottle and get it close, or what I do is just flip it in there. Now be careful, if you miss the adapter, most of the water will drain out of the bottle and flood your bowl. I then tried it with another deep bowl, but I did not fill the sand as high. That worked, but with smaller microgreens, you have to wait until they get bigger to harvest them. I then tried a shallow baking dish. This worked well for the small microgreens. They're easy to harvest now. Taller microgreens, like radish, work well in the deep baking dishes. The bowl will help to hold them up as they grow. Now one problem was that the sand wicks water and stays damp. I piled it above the rim on this baking dish to experiment with it, trying to get the top layer to dry out. I also did it with this meatloaf dish. The wet sand sticks to the microgreens kind of like soil does. As it dries, I'll just brush it off a little and most of it will fall off. As you can see, these worked well, especially the radish, spicy little things. The sand stayed damp and the bowl held them up nicely. These also worked well, mounding the sand up above the rim of the container. You can see the bottle is empty, but there's still some moisture in the bottom of the dish. The sand on the top is dry though, just what we wanted. You can see it falling off. Now this is outdoors, so you may not want to do this if you're growing inside. Or maybe put a tray under it to catch sand. So we like this concept, but we're going to explore some other options. Now as far as refilling goes, I did not refill these. All of these radish microgreens grew on their own. No care. And so did these. So you can do all of this with your non-refillable adapters. Let's talk a little bit about cleaning and reusing the sand. Once you harvest your beautiful microgreens, it's time to clean and start over. Let's take a closer look at this. You can see there's no mildew growth here. If we pull all the roots up, we'll take a lot of sand with it. So I'm just going to dump this whole thing into a 5-gallon bucket and rinse it with water. The adapter came out clean. Here are some of the roots. everything just floats to the top like the rest of the microgreen scraps. This all goes into the compost. You can see how clean the sand gets. You can rinse it a few more times to get most of the leftover stuff out, and if you had some algae, you could fill it up with water, add a capful of bleach, and let it sit for a day or two. Then rinse it again. You don't want to have your sand level so shallow that the water pulls on the top and your seeds just sit in water. Sometimes the glass makes this difficult. So we tried plastic containers. Now with plastic containers, we can drill a few small holes in the side about an inch up to let the water weep out. We put these together the same way we did before, except I found with the refillable adapter, I could cover it with an old cap before I filled the container with sand. This is just an easy way to fill your container and keep the sand from getting into the adapter. After I got it up to the level of the adapter and over the depth of the holes that we drilled, I could now flip the bottle into the adapter and the water will find its level. The holes would prevent it from letting the surface get too damp and pool with water. Now, just as before, we add some microgreen seeds. These are from Greener Harvest Seeds. Get an even single layer and not too crowded. Spritz it with a little water. This just keeps them damp during germination. And then cover it. I cut a hole in the lid of the container to fit my bottle. You could always cover with foil or plastic wrap. I then set these into a 10 by 20 nursery tray to catch any moisture that weeps out of the holes. If you have these outdoors, you probably don't have to worry about that. Now this worked well and is my favorite method yet. I'm going to keep experimenting with new containers, try different methods. And if you purchase the mason jar adapters, you could try this with a larger plastic container. You just have to set the jar and the adapter in before filling it with sand. Since the mason jars hold twice as much, you really don't have to worry about refilling. By the way, I got these containers at the Dollar Tree, but there are plenty of options in the food storage area of any store. Use your imagination, experiment, have fun. Now we have red cabbage and pak choi growing. I took the radish out and harvested it. It grows a lot faster. You can see the bottles are empty, but there's still a little moisture in the bottom. There's not anything leaking out. I like this method. I can control the amount of moisture that is in the sand, and it's a lot easier than doing it in the glass dishes. The sand's heavy too, and the glass container makes it even heavier. The plastic's a little lighter. Now here's that red cabbage. I let it go about another week and refilled it once. The bottle is again empty. We have a bunch of microgreens, and there's still dampness in the bottom. Now let's take a look at the top layer. There's no mildew, and the top layer of sand feels dry. Let's pull a few out. There's a little dampness on the roots, but not too much. The whole top layer is relatively dry. That's what I want. The roots are a little damp and the stems are dry. You can always put a little nutrient water in here if you want to harvest just a few of them and let some of them grow a little larger. But not too long. They'll be overcrowded and they'll need to go into bigger cracky containers. So this is making growing your food a lot easier, and whether you have the mason jar adapters or the new refillable ones, you can do the same. All of the adapters will be buy one get one free for the next week. The link is in my profile or the description. There's more tutorials coming for all of you who have already purchased some and you're getting ready for an awesome spring. I can't wait. Till next time, live to inspire, keep on growing, and be the change.